Hello and welcome to Talking About My Generation. I'm Herbert Ricardo with Alicia Vassar and Rich Grego. And today we're going to talk about what's been on the news. The Coldplay Jumbotron hugging
Incident.
yeah, incident. There you go. It's not an issue. It's an incident, and how everyone's been kind of chiming in, not only just high level BBC and CNN, but also everybody out there who are
Mhm.
putting in their 2 cents. So I'm going to turn this over to Alicia, and we're gonna have fun with this.
So I'm gonna kind of give like a brief overview of what happened. So
Please
just in
do.
case someone was under a rock and was
That
not
was
like
kind of
aware.
me. I feel like I don't
Really,
know. Well, I mean, I know about it. I just feel like I
I
don't know.
I did I
So,
did want to question both of you to see like how much if you'd noticed it at all because I had seen it on
hmm,
ABC News. I think it got
hmm,
as far um, that I was just like, okay, this is just something I originally saw on Instagram as a
yeah.
meme. And
Hmm,
now I'm seeing it on news and
hmm,
everyone is talking about it. But what essentially happened was at a Coldplay concert, of all things, the Jumbotron was going around and one of the couples reacted really strangely. As soon as they noticed their face was on the Jumbotron, they ended up separating from each other very quickly. One of them hid, and the other one hid their face. So everyone started. I think there was a joke made by the one of the front people for Coldplay to the extent that, either they're very shy or they're cheating. There's an affair going on.
I
Well,
bet
it
those
turned out it
people
was the
aren't big
latter.
Coldplay fans anymore. I'm just wondering. I don't know.
I know. You go to a concert expecting to like enjoy yourself and art, and then suddenly. But
Yeah.
at the same time, one of the things that interested me about this was it maybe there is a sense for people, maybe of my generation, that I am aware, I am very hyper aware of the fact that you can essentially go viral like this. But I wanted to go back to what is your, I guess, how did you end up getting any information about this?
Is, is that is that to me or
Oh,
to?
oh, I'm going to say
Yeah.
Dr. Ricardo.
Yeah. Okay. So what was interesting is I was sitting in my apartment and reading the news on BBC, and this came out as a feed, and I'm reading it, and I don't understand why this is such a big deal. And it was probably the day after is probably what it was. So anyway, I just kind of continued to read other stuff, but I read it and I'm like, okay, so it was a CEO and his chief people officer, and okay, and it looked like they were having an affair. But why is it such a big deal? Okay, whatever. And then I think it was probably a day later, I'm on Facebook and I see all these different memes going on. I go, oh
A
my
lot.
gosh. And then it's about him resigning. And then again, more and more. And now I'm getting things from my friends on it. Okay. I've got some memes being sent to my to my text messaging and everything else. So that's how I find out about it. And then, of course, I follow it, uh, probably because of many of us. Obviously, there's the issue of here's a CEO doing his own thing, right? And ha ha ha, you got caught. Here's somebody who gets paid a lot of money. And then also with your human resources director, your person who's supposed to be protecting employees and everything else. So this is all a lot of what I teach and talk about in the class. And if you don't think that this fall we'll be talking about this in my ethics class, you better believe we will, okay? Because I'm sure if it doesn't come up, I'll bring it up. So that's kind of how I found out about it. How about you, Rich?
Same kind of, yeah. My wife is a big consumer of, pop culture media. I'm not as much, I just don't have time. So, and it didn't come across, I don't get a lot of that kind of stuff I am on Facebook and stuff every day, but I don't get a lot of that kind of stuff. But she does. And she started telling me about it. And then after a couple of days, she was like, wow, this really blew up. And, there are all kinds of hilarious memes and everybody's talking about it. And yeah, so that's kind of how I heard about it. Like you said, unless you're living under a rock. I just didn't know. I was just wondering. I figured the reason I said that to you in the beginning is I'm just wondering if people are making such a big deal about it because there's something I don't know. It just doesn't seem like that big a deal to me. In an age when we're watching sex tapes of celebrities every other week, like why this was a big deal. So that's why I figured there must be some huge angle on it that I didn't know, I wasn't aware of, but I don't think so. Is there? It's just like a thing that everybody.
So I think something that's interesting is when I was trying to think of parallels, I
Yeah.
was like, I remember like the Monica Lewinsky incident. Like I understand why those situations were so giant. It
Mm,
was because of the power of the people at the time. These are
mm,
celebrities, these are people of immense power. It was the president of the United States.
mm.
Um, these are just two people. So
Yeah.
that kind of, to me, that's the part where I am confused. Like there is this sense that yes, it's nice to maybe reassert your morality in a way to say like, oh, they're doing these things. I think those things are bad. I don't do those things. So I feel much better. Um, but I don't think it's just purely that. I think there is kind of a culture of spectacle, and I don't know if that's generational. I don't know if that's social media. But it does feel weird how this is entertainment and these are just two people. They're not celebrities. They're not anyone of immense, immense power. Well, I guess that's not true because they did have power within their company. And I think that's important. And I think I would like to actually ask Dr. Ricardo, from like an organizational perspective and stuff, uh, how you thought of this situation.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the major reasons. The reason why it occurred, first of all, or it kind of blew up, was that the two individuals immediately take off. Now, right there, 99.999% of the time, if you are at a concert, at a football game, and that jumbo and that is shining at you, you are jumping around and you want to be on camera. There's your 5 minutes of fame. These two did not want to be on there. And so that's what everyone's like going, what happened? So the first thing is this becomes odd to begin with. Okay. Then the next thing is when we find out who it is. Yeah, it's the CEO of a company having an affair, and then they find out the affair is with, another executive in the in the company. And so when you look at that, suddenly people are, okay, we've exposed, okay, this affair. And even though, yes, affairs happen all the time, the idea that we're exposing a CEO who seems to be able to get away with anything, you're not going to get away with this. And I think that's the point. And, to Rich's point, yeah, okay, affairs happen all the time. What's the big deal? Well, I think in this situation, I think people like the idea, and it's almost even kind of in a fun way to get back at them. Of course, they both end up resigning. This is clearly what happens, and so yeah, I think the phenomenon about this, a lot of it really has to do with it's not just two people, it's not just anyone. I think when you're a CEO of a company, you do have somewhat celebrity status. Probably, if nothing else, your title and probably the amount of money you earn. He probably earns a fair amount of money.
You
No?
know, I'm wondering though, guys, do you think that wouldn't have happened if they had just been two people? Like, and that the Jumbotron caught them cheating and they did that? I mean, I think that might have gone viral anyway, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, my wife watches freaking reality TV all the time. And there are people who are nobodies doing nothing. And they get filmed doing it and become celebrities just by virtue of the fact that they literally they film them going out to get their nails done or fighting after they get drunk over dinner, and these become huge public spectacles that have fans talking about and everything else. And these people are nobody. I
I
mean,
don't
in
think,
terms of social status. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't think it would have hit the BBC and the CNN. Okay. Yeah, I don't think two people
Maybe
having,
I don't know.
it could have, like,
Yeah,
look at two people having an affair and boom, and it's out there. But
yeah,
someone would have had to, investigate and find out who these two individuals are. And if you're going down and down and down and find out that these are two people who don't have any,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not so sure. I think what
yeah,
happens is you find who are those people? Why was that such a big deal?
yeah,
And I think in the search is what
yeah.
you found.
Yeah, that
I
does give them an entertaining backstory. I mean, right, I guess.
I think you do have a point though, Rich. There is a level of virality that even if you're nobody, that's kind of the
Yeah,
entire gist of virality is that uh, it can happen at any moment to anyone.
yeah,
And I think uh, yes, to some extent, it wouldn't have gotten as far, like Dr. Carter was saying. But I think it's interesting that we feel this entitlement to knowing this personal information about people and having such uh it feels very invasive to me. I would like to see what your opinion on it is, Dr. Ricardo.
Yeah, yeah. I think the way we are today, we just love the idea of uh, catching someone. I think we also love the idea of being on, right? So the other thing has to do with the position of how many likes can I get out of this? Even for CNN or BBC or whoever, by putting something that people are going to look at, people are going to watch, that just draws attention. So I think what happens is this all becomes more and more of attention gathering. That that's more so of what I see in
Mhm.
this whole big picture.
I do see that there's people who actively seek out that, but I think what's interesting to me is it affecting a larger portion of us? Because for me as an anxious person, I'm always hyper aware of, whether or not someone can see me or something, and that changes the way I act. When I'm less anxious, I'm much more comfortable and I act in a different manner. So I'm wondering if this kind of feeling surveilled constantly uh, kind of affects the way we interact with each other and in public.
I think in public it doesn't quite as much, with the exception of a couple of positions, and that is law enforcement. Law enforcement today has to be so careful because everyone's a journalist today. Everybody carries a phone and everybody has an opinion, right? So everyone's a photojournalist. They go ahead, they take a picture of something. Rodney King, what am I talking about? It was
George Floyd was one of
I'm
them.
so sorry. My mind is done so
Ahmaud
bad.
Arbery.
Actually, it happened with Rodney King too. Okay, there was
That
video.
was the video.
Okay, so the point though is you've got these situations where in those positions, and if you're, let's say, a celebrity and you're going out, you've got to recognize that. I don't think any of us, the three of us, as we're walking down the street, we're behaving any way differently. I think if we go to a party, well, that's probably a little bit different, but I think if we go into a public environment, I'm not so sure we are. I mean, if you go into McDonald's and order something to eat, you are on camera. If you go to the DMV, you're on camera. Department of Motor Vehicles. Almost everywhere. You go to a concert. Are you going to behave differently? I don't know. I think you're going to jump up and down. You're going to love the music. You're going to sing along with it. If you're at a football game, you're going to be cheering for your team, whatever. I'm not so sure that you're going to. Now, of course, I would imagine now what's going to happen is anybody who's having an affair, they're going to say the last place we want to go to is a public environment with a possibility of not only even the Jumbotron, but other people with phones taking pictures of one thing and then capturing us in the back, whatever it happens to be. So I don't know. I don't know that this changes how we behave. I think we're just aware of it. London, if you walk through the streets of London, just about every square foot or meter, you're being recorded, you're being watched. People still do, and people realize this. Maybe they forget, and so then they start behaving in crazy ways or whatever it might be. But I think this is just one of those things. But it does show, it does expose who we are, and there's that possibility that if you're caught being bad or caught being good, and someone is there to record it, and if they want to, they'll put it on, their Facebook, Instagram, X, whatever it might be, and you're going to be.
I think it's interesting that the concept that, or the fact that this has only existed for so long. Like there was a time where both you and Rich never would have had the notion of virality, the idea that you could be known by literally what feels like the world. So do you kind of I don't know where to go with that one, but like, is there a difference that you guys see? Do you think that made a difference in your life? I would ask you, Rich.
In my life personally, I'm not sure. I get the point though, because I think, again, for public people, there was always the issue of, everything you're going to do in public is going to be scrutinized. And very often, even when you're in private and you don't know about it. And we can go back to, I think you named one, right? The Monica Lewinsky scandal. And then there was, remember Gary Hart, who was the presidential candidate in the 1980s, I think, Democrat, and he got caught by a journalist. Yeah.
His yacht.
Yeah, on his yacht with the mistress or whatever, and
I'm surprised I haven't heard of this.
Yeah.
There's no reason why. You know what? I was 35, 40 years ago.
Yeah. That wasn't introduced. I mean, to contrast generationally, maybe how, at least for public figures, that phenomenon has changed. If you want to compare the public response to those things that turned into scandals with, say, Donald Trump, who literally gets caught on camera and in 2016, or on tape, saying the most vulgar things about women and about things he's done and things he wants to do and stuff like that. And now it's kind of no big deal. I mean, that incident in the 1980s ruined Gary Hart's presidential campaign and career. Things that were much worse that came out in terms of his private life about Donald Trump didn't seem to faze anybody. And I suppose it's certainly arguable that is because we have been sufficiently desensitized to things like that because of our media culture, namely social media culture. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it does kind of reinforce the sense that disconnecting from social media and not have, because one of the things is now you have access to everyone's opinion. And that's one of the things that I found interesting about this whole incident is everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted to say something about this. And it that can be, I don't think people should subject themselves to that. So there's this sense that I think this is definitely reinforcing for me why disconnecting from social media can be a very good thing because you could get very stuck in that cycle of dogpiling. And it just does not seem like a very good state to be in. And it's not very, yeah, I just don't think it's a very good state to be in.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rich, sorry.
Oh, no, I just remember, I just thinking, even, I had another career prior to this, as Herb knows, as an investigator. And one of the, the things that I remember we were, it was always an issue in terms of the surveillance state and culture that we live in now, is that there's always been sort of this very practically drawn distinction legally, but I think everybody has this intuitive sense of the division between personal and public, of they call the legal expectation of privacy, right? Which is when you're in your house or in a private place, people shouldn't expect to be surveilled. Whereas if you're in any kind of domain that we would consider public, then you should just expect that people are looking at you. And I think that's psychologically, at least in the modern era, what most people think, regardless of social media or not. But I do think that social media seems to have had a greater impact on blurring what we used to call the distinction between public and private. And maybe, as Herb said before, work environments are one of the professional environments are one of the main areas now of contention about to what extent is what we're doing private or public when we're at work. Because obviously, when you're in the restroom, practically speaking, that's considered, I think that's where we draw the line, right? As opposed to the common areas. But what about when you're surfing the internet, for instance, at work? Is that private or public? And it's an important domain. It's an important thing to consider now that we never used to really have to consider before. I don't know what you think about that, but
Yeah, I think the behavior, how we behave, is clearly influenced by now the fact of how much camera environment there might be. There's no doubt that sometimes in public environments, contrary to what I'd said, that in some areas where there's a lot of cameras, we just kind of forget and just kind of do whatever we're doing. And then other times we're very much aware that there are cameras, like in the workplace, as Richard mentioned. So we're going to have to, so we kind of watch that. And kind of going back to this whole social media and when something out of the ordinary happens and then we chime in, this actually kind of pulled me back a little bit to Brian Thompson, who was the CEO of United Health when he was gunned down at the beginning of the year in New York City. And as horrific as that was, and there was a manhunt out and everything else, there were a lot of people on social media who were almost supporting the gunman because of the healthcare problems we all have faced in our lives and the callousness of what the healthcare environment has done to us, and CEOs who make such, massive salaries off of it. Now, all of those things that I listed should be absolutely nothing and shouldn't be anywhere near looking at wanting to execute someone because of what they do. This person had a job. He was legally to have the job, and he was doing his job. Our society has allowed this, and so it would be up to kind of society to make a difference and a change to that. The point though is I kind of see the similarity in the sense of this CEO now who's wanting to sue Coldplay and the environment that he was in
I
because
did
it
not
was
know that.
exposed is crazy. Because he says it's ruined his life or whatever. Well, again,
What
of
was
course,
this a statement by the CEO? Because I know
yes.
that there is a statement floating around that is said that it's not officially from him, that it's not from him. I think it's made by a parody account. Either way, whether or not it's real or not, I think one of the things that I think of when you bring up that CEO killing is a lot of people feel disempowered from being able to make that change that you're talking about, because it is a reflection on society that we allow healthcare to uh, impoverish people, that we allow this system that it's just awful in so many ways. There's so many people who don't get access to the healthcare that they need because we have this medical uh, the system that we do in the US, which is not the same in other countries. Um, so I feel like to some extent, I understand social media in that aspect because it gives a voice to people who felt powerless. Whether or not that's real power is up in the air, but I think it is an outlet for people, and that's why that situation happened.
And that's exactly what it was. It's exactly what it was. Social media is a platform for opinions. Social media is a platform for your voice to be heard. And again, as bad as that was, you're absolutely right. There are people who are so disgusted with how healthcare is being provided, not by necessarily the clinicians, of course,
Mhm.
but the corporations. So yeah, I mean, and so when something like this, as horrific as it sounds, happens, people chime in. And again, kind of going back to Rich's part, you have all these politicians. My goodness, have a politician, doesn't matter what side they're on, do something wrong, and you're going to have so many people on the opposite side. I mean, just go as viral as they can and just go on and on and on. And of course, then suddenly we're starting to figure out, okay, well, what's more important, the activity or what led to the activity? And sometimes that gets lost in the comments, right? That's the whole point. Um, but that's the way it is. And I just kind of want to go back to also one thing that you had mentioned, and we were talking a little bit about it, and that is the way it used to be, the way it was before social media. Well, before social media, either you had to witness something and then you had to call the newspaper or call the television and say that you witnessed something, or it was professional individuals with cameras following people all the way around. You didn't have access to, again, everybody having a video cam on them at that moment. I mean, the phone, it takes 2 seconds to activate your camera and your video, and you're doing that at that particular moment. And of course, the problem is too is a picture will say a lot in what it's doing, but it doesn't give the complete context. Even a video doesn't, because it can be cut in certain areas. You don't know what led up to it. It's a car accident. You don't know what led up to it. Now you're just taking a picture of the video after the accident actually happens. Or maybe you take a video while it's about to happen, but then you don't know what happens afterwards, whatever it happens to be. So this is a problem that we clearly have, where we're getting bits and bytes, and you even were just able to point out to me, here I'm thinking, because I read it and what I believe to be a reliable source, that the CEO is suing Coldplay, and then suddenly you're hearing in another environment, and again, I don't know which environment now is most accurate, but this is one of the problems, isn't it? That we have with
Yeah.
social media.
No, you raise that issue. I've thought about this a lot lately since everybody's talking about AI and deep fakes and things like that. One thing I have noticed again, my wife is my test case because she reads all this pop culture stuff online. But even I do. I'll read news items get sent to me on my feed and Facebook and stuff like that. That we're increasingly like, is this real? Whether it's a picture or anything else. And half the time it's not. And I'm just thinking with the generation and the increased skill of AI in both literally faking everything you can conceive of, right? It can take one of us or a celebrity or a famous person and literally create a video with them in it, even though it's not them, right? Of them talking or doing something. This happens all the time. It can generate news stories and broadcast them. It can generate all kinds of any kind of document you want. In 10 years, let alone 20. How much of what you see online, I mean, with AI bots generating for every corporation or any little business or celebrity or public figure that wants to generate tons of news about themselves or about somebody else. How much of what we even see online is going to be real? My guess is that you've got a bot generating stuff for somebody every day, and it can spit out thousands of items every day of junk. That's going to be 90% of what we see or more. All right. And trying to discern whether it's fake or not is going to become increasingly difficult. And what really frightens me is when they start doing that about serious news items, not just this kind of thing. When they start talking about, oh, there was a terrorist attack in Washington that didn't happen, right? Or somebody tried to do something, some politician tried to pull off a coup in Washington that never happened, but you get flooded with that information. And with people who are online who are not discerning enough to even think about whether it's fake. That really worries me when I see
I
this.
think that's a really good takeaway, I think, from this incident, because it can be very easy to kind of brush over it. It's like it's small misinformation. It doesn't really make a giant difference in the grand scheme of it. But like you said, it doesn't stay within that context. We're talking about this could be used for larger nefarious purposes, and it's mind-boggling. But I think it makes it important that we're using a lot more caution when looking at events, especially when they're in this online viral atmosphere where it's something catches like fire, like this entire incident, it will catch like fire and then it spreads everywhere. And suddenly everyone believes one thing and it's an echo chamber. There's confirmation bias and there's all of these other things that you run into. But I think that's kind of a good takeaway to this situation. Thank you for entertaining my little obsession for because it popped out probably last weekend, I want to say, and then I just started seeing more and more of it,
Yeah.
and I was like, you know what? This might make a decent podcast episode. This might, and I really enjoyed listening to you guys' perspective on it, because I didn't really think about the aspects of we do already have this sense of there's a public and how you act there. There's an expectation that you are going to be seen. That's why it's so wild that these people were out in the open doing this.
Yeah.
And Alisha, here we are having our conversation. This is kind of how this podcast came out, with us having a conversation, and that's exactly what we're doing. And obviously, we don't do this live, but if we did, if we made any kind of mistake, let's say I made a mistake, suddenly someone can say, "Oh, look at that professor over there, doesn't know the difference between Rodney King and, and fill in the blanket or whatever," and could, right? I mean, and now even if I go ahead and, we're going to put this out. People can still say that. So again, buyer beware. We have to be able to recognize that when we put something out there, it's a representation of us. There's no doubt about it. And then also that there's very little out there that's forgiving. The world is out there, and you might have your family and friends that'll forgive you, but there's a whole group of other people out there who don't care to forgive you, and say, good, we got you on this one. And we're moving further and further into that space, as again, as Richard mentioned, you're talking about it, that, where are we going to draw the line on individuals first who make a mistake? That's number one. And then number two, individuals who fabricate things that are so good, so well fabricated, that it's very difficult to discern and know whether or not it's real. And that's the space that we're going to be living in.
Good point. Just to put one more concluding big picture sort of philosophical perspective on this, there was a fascinating book by a intellectual historian. Don't remember the book as usual. I remember the name of the guy, Berman, in case anybody wants to reference it. Very good book. He was talking about modern, it's a book he wrote about sort of modern culture and how it came about. One thing I remember from that book that he said, I read it a number of years ago now, is that the big problem for past centuries was not enough information about things, which led to all kinds of problems. The big problem of the postmodern era that we're in now is we're drowning in information. There's too much of it, in a sense, in a very real sense. And we just don't know how to cope with it. This is a great example of that. And my projection is sort of, as Herb was alluding to, and you as well, I think this may be the big issue of the next half century or so. What the drowning, because we are what they call it, right? We used to be in an age of capital. That used to be what determined power and the way society would go. And now it's information. Information is what we trade on in our contemporary era, right? In our personal lives, professionally, and economics and stuff like that. So what we're going to do with this crazy overflow of information, particularly with the advent of AI, is, I think, going to be the defining issue of what your generation, Alisha, is going to have to, one of the things that they're going to have to contend with and figure out. So.
I completely agree.
Yeah, it's where we're going. It's where we're headed. Good. So I'm trying to think, anything else that we want to cover, or
No.
no? Well, Alisha, thanks for bringing up the this particular topic, subject, and I mean, this is great. Current events is exactly what we love to bring up here, and
I like that you brought up the ethics class and things, because it does feel like something we'd have a conversation about in class, because I know ethics came up a lot because you had that ethics class right after the international business one that I was in. And sometimes it's really good to just, I guess, take into that academic setting things that are very pop culture, because I think they do really show what people are consuming, and it kind of gives us an idea of I mean, a topic that people are interested in.
I think so. It's relevant to today's environment.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. Good. All right. We've burned up another half hour of our lives, but enjoying our friendship here, and hopefully you all out there have enjoyed it too. So if you want to hear more, join us again and hit that subscribe button, and we'll certainly be back. But again, Alisha, thank you. Rich, thank you. And so I'm signing off and wishing everybody a real nice weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We look forward to next week as we cover another cool and fun topic. This podcast was produced by Three Lions Production and sponsored by Con Consulting and Training. Until next time, keep it between the lines.